So it's recording now. So today I have Rebecca to talk with me about being a commercial artist. And while I often complain about corporatism and capitalism, it's in the world you have to do these things. And while we may not want the how do you say it, the mercantile class at the top of our hierarchy, they have to be there. They're not. While we would rather they're near the bottom, they're a necessity. So we should talk about how, if you wanted to be a commercial artist, you can go about it. And so we shall. I mean, I have to sell my book. All these things need to be done. It's not that we want to eliminate that aspect. It just, lower its place in the hierarchy. So, Rebecca, let me start by. Well, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you learned your visual art skills? Because I know you didn't start out to be an artist. And
no, I grew up in a really intellectual family, at least in my dad's side, the Jewish Latino side.
Right.
And my dad was a physics and business major.
Right.
But he always had an artistic side, and he also took up architecture. He didn't have an architectural. He didn't major in architecture, but he did take some architecture classes. I took some architecture classes. I was actually a biology and pre-med major. Mm-hmm. So, we both have that sort of STEM background, but we were both always artistic. I learned how to paint in oils when I was around 7 or 8 years old. I started sketching when I was about 5. And then when I was in biology, you have to study anatomy and you do these dissections and everything. And then you get to know more anatomy, and that sort of improved.
Oh, you froze there. Okay.
Yeah.
So you set out to study biology. That was your goal.
Yeah. Actually, I wanted to be a scientist. I wasn't so sure if I wanted to be an MD. My goal really was to be a neurologist, or I was thinking of possibly being a geneticist also, but I wasn't so sure. But anyway, at the end of it, I decided that I like people too much to be stuck in a lab the whole day. So that's how I don't know. I guess I'm a natural with people. And I grew up in different places. I grew up in Asia, but I traveled a lot, especially when I was younger with my father. We went through Europe and Asia and the Middle East. And I found out that I was really good with people. And then and then I did some modeling when I was younger. That's actually how I got into advertising. So
I didn't know. Okay, so really roundabout. You landed in art in a very roundabout way. That's for sure.
Yeah,
it must have upset your, let us say, father's side of the family to see you move away from a more lucrative scientific career a little bit. Would you say? Or
actually, my dad sat me down. He said, "Do you really want to be a scientist?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm kind of a geek that way." And they said, "Well, when you're a scientist, you're going to have to be in the lab, and you're going to have to do all these repeat experiments over and over again." And he said, you might have the foundation where you understand, chemistry and things like that very well, but you just don't. I don't think you have it in you to be just sitting in a lab, because you're not that type of person. And so I'm very sociable. And then it's kind of the opposite, where most parents would say, "Yeah, you should be a scientist, especially if you're a girl. You should, you got to be spearhead this movement of women in science, like Marie Curie or something. And
that was mostly Pierre, I think. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and then and he was like, he didn't actually put it that way, but then he kind of implied that, I think you might be miserable in that kind of career because it's just not your personality.
Well, you're saying so. Your father converted to Catholicism, and you're a Catholic yourself, right? That's right.
Actually, his mother converted.
Oh, his mother. Oh, so it's long time.
Yeah. So
and you live currently in Southeast Asia somewhere.
Yeah, I grew up here. And
you lived in America for a while. I know that, right? You until recently.
Yeah, I was in California and Illinois, and I took up bow hunting in Illinois.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
Like Diana in the woods.
Oh, that's
Diana
a romantic. Diana or Artemis. Yeah. So I actually had a horse that was named Artemis. But,
very good.
Yeah.
Very good. I like that. I like that part.
Yeah. But yeah, you need.
So you could have been a model, and you could have been this or that, but you wound up doing marketing through modeling somehow, and then.
Well, the modeling thing was an accident as well. I had a cousin who was a stylist, right. And sometimes she didn't want to work with models because they have attitudes. And she, can you just come in instead because you don't have an attitude.
Okay.
But yeah, it wasn't for me. I didn't last in it very long. But because I was in it, I met people who were in advertising and marketing. Right. And then, they said, well, you got this and you got that, and you understand art and you understand art history. Yeah. And you get a lot of artists in that advertising world. Mm-hmm. And you can make quite a bit of money, actually.
Yeah.
So that's
money
really how it started.
So it's a very roundabout way that you. I'm not sure how instructional this is going to be for people how to get into commercial art when you started out studying biology and then got there through modeling.
Yeah, I got there through modeling, but you have to have this work ethic, though. And I know you hate capitalism, but you.
Well, I don't hate it. I just think it's. I don't like it ruling the roost the way it is. I know there's a certain need for economical things. Well,
you know how Michelangelo was a stickler when he painted the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah.
And there's a space for that in the commercial world. Especially when you work with luxury brands, they like that you pay attention to their brand, and
So they enjoy it if you treat them badly and say,
No. They like it when you're precise, and I guess the whole scientific Jewish thing comes in quite handy because when you're,
which you have only in namesake. Which you have only in namesake, so you apply that to it. Do you say, I'm going to look at my name? I'm going to be so analytic, and so is that what you're saying?
Well, when you're, I think I mentioned before this interview that it was nice when I got to work with scientists sometimes, and sometimes I got to work with engineers when you do packaging. And then, you have these, when you're going into manufacturing, you have these tolerance levels. Like, you can only, the tolerance level for the thread of this bottle is like 0.1 mm.
Yeah.
And, that's for someone who's, inclined to math and science, that's kind of nice.
Yeah. But you are a good example of what I always say about art as well, in that anybody can really learn it, and it's more like an applied science of its own. People think you have to be just like a total just expressing yourself hippie or whatever, and that's the main ingredient to being an artist. When it's really like a science that anybody can learn. So that shows, and then talk of precision and so forth really reminds me of that.
I think when you have the precision and the artistic part together, I think that's really brilliant. Even in nature, you have symmetry, and there's a math to it.
Yeah.
And whether the artist understands the math to it or not, it might be very intuitive for him.
Yeah.
But it's the application. You see it in the application.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You sense it even if you don't understand it.
Mm-hmm. I think a really good example of that is Michelangelo. Because he had that inventor side.
Yeah.
But he also had this, where he could paint brilliantly and more so
even Leonardo, I would say. He was in there like dissecting bodies on his own out of interest, out of anatomical interest and his inventions and things, even more than Michelangelo, I would say. But all those guys, all those Renaissance guys were.
They had a little tiff between them because Michelangelo thought that, sculptors were sort of like, kind of down the trough because they get dusty. And I forget what he said. But you know what I mean? They had that tiff.
I think he just said that to insult him. I don't think he believed that, but yeah, it's a good insult.
Yeah, it's just that rivalry they had.
So let me ask you then. So how did you move? Okay, so how did you move from? You knew these marketing people. So how did you get from there into like branding? You showed me like a lot of illustration stuff you were doing that was very good, and it was related to branding. But it was like you were just doing, art. Mm-hmm. It wasn't you were, doing. Maybe you do packaging design and things as well, but and some book illustration stuff you were doing. So how did you move into that from just knowing these marketing people? You said, "Oh, I have these other skills," or
yeah. So when I met these people through, my little tiff in modeling stint, rather.
Was this in America? Was this in America, or where was this?
It was in Asia. It was a little bit in America as well, but it's, it was in New York. New York's really competitive. So I didn't really get that far as modeling was in New York because you know how it is. But anyway, mostly in Asia. And then from Asia, I was able to get contacts in Europe. Then I worked on a lot of cosmetic designs, fashion.
As a model or as a marketing?
As a marketing person.
Oh, okay. But nothing to do with art, was it? Or was it, at that point, was it art related?
There was art because I actually used Art Nouveau with some of the packaging. So it was quite interesting that you said that some of my drawings were like Alphonse Mucha's drawings because I actually sort of emulated him with some of my proposals, my packaging proposals.
Right.
But really what it is when you're, I guess you just, with these things, you have to submit a bid sometimes.
Yeah.
Like a bid for a campaign.
Yeah.
And, you do marketing research and you make all this eye candy.
Yeah.
And you have to win the bid. So it can be quite competitive.
Right.
And, when you have that, I guess that X factor, when you know how to present something and you make that connection with people, then the connection with people is very important, and listening to your client and listening to what they want to apply.
Yes.
It's not as romantic as being commissioned for, a painting, but you still need your client's input. It's somewhat similar.
Yeah, well, so you're right about that. That is the secret to commercial art, in that you have to sell yourself. You have to sell yourself and know how to relate to people. It's probably more important. You can probably do the most brilliant paintings or illustrations in the world, but if you don't have that angle, it's pointless. So that would be the lesson you could say to be being a commercial artist.
Person.
Yeah. So you explain it as the X factor, which I believe was originally coined by that serial killer guy.
Which one is it? Ted Bundy? I don't really.
No, another guy. He was very bad. The what was it? BTK killer. He said, I can do this because I have the X factor, which was okay. Whatever. No, I'm just joking. I'm just so
weird.
Yeah, I know. You reminded me of that. So, but when you say X factor,
no, it's okay. It's actually kind of funny.
Yeah, of course. But so when you say X Factor, is there any way you can describe what that is? From your
I think it's the art of diplomacy.
all right.
And the thing is, when I come a little bit from this old world, I'm sure you'll understand this because you have a pretty good understanding of history, where the women are sort of like the women are meant to entertain guests. If you read Jane Austen, for example, or Charlotte Bronte, because they're more familiar authors.
They are the curators of social engagements, let's say.
Yeah, where women have to learn how to sing and learn how to dance. And I went to finishing school, and then we were taught finishing school that if you get married or whatever, you have, and your husband's not available to discuss business with a possible business liaison, then you have to potential business partner or whatever. You have to be sort of the diplomat. So we were taught how to speak. We had to learn how to sing. We had to learn how to dance. I took up flamenco. Not so good now.
You are really a citizen of the world, that's for sure.
Well, we try, and I'm not a natural singer. But I got training where I could be decent, because some people are natural, and
you want to sing for us right now? You want to sing a song right now?
No. I'm not going to do that. I'm totally out of practice. With enough practice, I guess I'm decent. But when you learn opera, you have to learn different languages. You have to learn in German, English, French, and Italian. And I remember one time, like I said, I'm not a natural singer. I was learning Casta Diva. I don't know if you're familiar with that song. And there's this point in Casta Diva where it's the really highest note, and I was trying to hit it, and it took me like 20 tries. And finally I hit it at the 21st try or something like that. And then I said, wow, that was a difficult song, and I was able to do it. And then the next day I didn't have a voice, and I didn't have a voice for 4 days after that. And that's just the universe telling you are not meant to sing.
Okay, yeah, that's true. So you're telling me then that your X Factor is due to your finishing school. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the finishing school helped. It provides you with sort of like a foundation for finesse.
Right.
And when I was in Chicago, I became good friends with somebody from the south side of Chicago, which is sort of like the killing fields of America.
Right.
And so one time we were talking, it was like, yo, man. And then, I used to use the word finesse a lot. You got to finesse, you have to use finesse. And he's like, what does that mean? Because finesse in ghetto slang, at least in the south side of Chicago, means to manipulate somebody, to sort of cheat somebody. And
entirely untrue.
Yeah, and I was like, well, that's not how I learned it. Well, I know now what it means in that particular neighborhood, but it's diplomacy.
Yes,
it's the art of diplomacy. It's an art form, really.
Yeah.
So
finishing school teaches you diplomacy from the feminine point of view, both traditionally and realistically, probably you would say. I guess obviously, if it works for you, you can say that these things, because some like finishing school people in the West now would scoff at that, especially women. I think be like, oh,
yeah. I think they still have finishing schools in Switzerland, but I didn't go to Switzerland.
They're still around. I think you can probably find them even in England. In that, I don't know if there'd be something like that in America or anything, but it wouldn't be a popular. Like I'm glad that is your X Factor, because it's just sounds like it ties in with everything I usually carry on about.
Yeah. I don't complain about being a woman. Some things are more difficult. You do get the clients who want the other treatment, and sometimes you don't get the project because of that. But
What do you mean? What do you mean? They want you to flirt with them or something? Is that what you mean?
Well,
something beyond that. Is that what?
yeah, something beyond that.
No way.
They basically.
It's like on Mad Men or something.
Mad Men, exactly. It's
really.
It's a bit, it's a bit dark. Mad Men's dark, but it's not quite that bad if you know how to handle yourself, right. Which I do. But yeah, sometimes you don't get the project. But most of the time, it's really about the hard work and listening to the client.
Right.
And being creative, because you have to stand out. And a lot of it also has to do with knowing what people want before they know it themselves.
Right. Right.
So an understanding of human nature is very important.
Right. So and you can only get that through experience, really. I mean, finishing school can help you, or maybe is that something you would say you had naturally? I don't know.
Well, when I was growing up, I grew up in a third world country. It was very poor, but everything in the country basically had to be done by foreigners because there wasn't enough. There was the education in the country was kind of poor, and for a lot of things like building roads and things like that, you had all these expats that had to come in, and my dad used to sit me in a lot of his business meetings. Jewish thing to do.
Even though he's not Jewish anymore.
No, he's not Jewish. But so I meet people from around the world even before I got to go around the world, and I picked up accents when I was young,
right?
Like a French accent or a German accent.
You're possibly the most worldly person I've ever talked to.
Possibly, but I also, grew up in a place where most people didn't have running water, at least at the time when I was growing up.
This was in South America, you mean? Is it?
No, Southeast Asia.
Oh,
and we had communists here, and not as bad as Cambodia, but so. Yeah. I'm actually quite grateful for my experience because kind of appreciate what you have.
Well, it's like Conan on the Wheel of Pain. All your any hardship, like Nietzsche says, is only to your benefit as long as it doesn't kill you.
Yeah.
But
I think. I had a German friend who said that was dient mich umbringt macht mich stärker. I think that's what it is. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Excellent. It's so true, though. So you live now in the place you grew up, is that right? Or you moved somewhere else in Asia?
Yeah, I live now here. I can't leave quite yet because of the whole Rona thing. The Rona.
Okay, yeah. Right. Oh, I see you're looking to leave, right?
Huh?
Well, we don't have to talk about what you're doing. Yeah, that's fine. But you were saying there was a lot of communism problems when you were young there. What's going on?
There was. I mean, you'd have these militias that would come out of the jungle and then go into these little farming villages and then harass the farmers. They ask for livestock. They ask for grain, all in the interest of equality. You feed us and we'll be the army that changes all of this and brings equality to everybody. Then they would retreat back into the jungle. And then they would be highwaymen too. They would, stop cars and rob cars and, all in the name of equality. You know how communists are.
So just like in Portland or what?
Oh yeah, Chaz.
Yeah, that's what they do, I guess.
Yeah,
okay, well, it's all very interesting. Very good. So, you've already kind of superseded some of my other questions. So what do you think overall of branding and marketing and working in that field?
Well, I've refused some jobs because I just I felt like it was a moral obligation to refuse a job. I'm not going to name which brands I refused.
Okay.
But if I just refused to do some jobs because studies show that they give cancer, that kind of job.
Right.
So, I mean, you can still be yourself. You know, I've done book covers. Most of the book covers I've done were for universities. So for university publishing, and a lot of times the professor would get involved, and sometimes there would be too much input from the professor, and you can sort of picture where you know what book would sell on the shelf.
Yeah. It always amazes me when people hire you for your skill and then start giving you orders as though they know everything themselves, which happens so often.
Yeah, it happens with academics a lot.
Does it? Yeah, well, they think they're the ultimate genius of everything, I guess. Yeah. One of the best stories I ever heard of a graphic design company was this guy in New York, and he was one of the top guys, so he got away with it somehow. But apparently when the clients would come in to complain and say, "Oh, we want it done this way or that way," after he'd offered them his, sample designs and saying, "This is what we're going to do," because, certain clients will want to take over and do it their way anyways, even though they've hired you as a creative person. Apparently he would literally sit them down and say, "All right, you guys are fucking idiots. It's going to be this way or get the fuck out," basically. And he was apparently very successful with that. Like, he was one of the top guys in New York for just, like, as you said earlier, treating them badly. Like my
Well, I think Ogilvy was that way, but I'm not so sure. But I heard that maybe it was him.
It's the way to be, obviously. So, when people hire you for branding, are you known for the illustration stuff? Or do you have a style that they are seeking?
They basically hire me for, I think, because I work pretty fast, and also because of the success of the campaign of maybe other people that I mean, it helps when you're good with people, because then people refer you. They say, "Well, I worked with this person." A lot of times I also work with the team. Okay. So, I might give the idea that goes a go ahead, but then it gets refined by, several different people. Right. So it's even if the original idea, which got refined, was yours, there's still input from other people. It's also about being a team player.
Right.
So what can I say?
What can you say? That's it. That's the reality. You're in the nitty gritty of the reality.
Yeah.
So would you give it all up if you could to be a full-time illustrator or painter?
Well, I would if I thought that it would bring in money regularly. Yeah. Which it's pretty tough. It's a pretty tough gig, especially with, if you look at, just a good example is book covers when you go to a bookstore, or even if you're looking for books, on Amazon, Kindle. If you see a lot of the book covers, a lot of them are digital art covers.
Yep.
I use digital art myself. I mean, you saw some of my drawings. I start out with a pencil. Yep. And then just color. A lot of times I'll color in using a computer, in Photoshop or Illustrator. Right. A lot of times Photoshop, because then if I need to adjust the color, because the client would want the color adjusted, it would be easier to do it in the computer. But then having the pencil drawings, sketches, sort of, everyone will still want that. The natural feeling that comes with sketching something on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, and I think this is quite important, a lot of times you get these digital artists who can't draw. So if you can draw and, you're good with human anatomy, and you can make a sensual woman from, that's actually a pretty pretty big factor, and it makes you stand out. So I would never give that up.
No, that's good. That's good that you can do that. Yeah, because it is, and it's a factor they can't explain maybe that, but when they see it, they know something real. Because I really have it for digital art overall.
Mm-hmm.
I often talk about it being inferior. I mean, it's handy in that quantitative way, like you said, where you can offer these other options. You can change the color at the blink of an eye and give them options. And but it's it sacrifices the qualitative. And I'm hearing a weird echo. Do you hear that?
No, not from my end. No.
Oh, it's gone now, I think. What was I saying? And so yeah, if you could be even, I mean, the ultimate thing would be more like that guy in New York and just say, okay, I'm doing everything by hand. Just shut the fuck up.
Yeah, it's sort of like who's that guy, Dan Pena? He did those London Real videos. I mean, that kind of attitude. It's like, when you told me that you were going to do this interview and I was facing this pea heads, he was referring to the audience.
Yeah.
You said they were going to either love me or hate me. I knew what it was going to be. All my life, I've been this way. And all my life, people love me.
Yeah.
By not caring what people think.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't really care too much what people think. I respect humanity and I always explained it this way. I always told people, because sometimes you get these hotshots and everything, and they don't respect people. And I tell them, you might not like a person, but if you're thinking about a human, even somebody who's got real issues like spina bifida or something, where you have these bones and they grow incongruously and they, like the elephant man. I think that was spina bifida. That person is still biochemical miracle, and you have to respect that. And once you have that kind of humility, people will love you. And that's not a sales line.
Well, you have to admit you come across these exploitational people, like the ones you said expected you to behave like a prostitute and so forth. You do come across people.
Yeah, they did, but I can't claim sexual harassment or anything, because I guess in my case, people just know when to back off. But if
you come across people that don't reciprocate this idea that, respectful attitude, and
yes, and I guess you're kind of a traditionalist, and if you look at how women are being asked to behave now, it's sort of like it's very vinegary, and vinegary. It's like proving that you can do everything that a man does, but why do you have to prove that? You don't have to prove it.
Yeah,
just do it.
Yeah,
you don't have to prove anything. Actually, I like being a woman because in some ways things are easier for me. Actually, I'm going to get so much trouble if a feminist hears that. But
we'll just block them and hope for the best. I guess.
Yeah, but
I don't think if they start harassing you, just shout anti-Semitism and then they'll shut up.
Yeah, but I'm not Jewish anymore.
Well, pretend you are.
But anyway, if you have that finesse, in the traditional definition of the word, if you have the finesse, you can steer things your way pretty well. I don't think I can't say that I get what I want 100% of the time, but I probably get what I want a good 85% of the time.
I can sense that about you. Yes, it seems to be the case. Whatever you've done, or however
Yeah,
your
and
configuration of
there's
worldly.
no manipulation in it. And you know, I heard I heard someone once say, when you talk to somebody, it has to be real, because even a fool eventually is going to figure out that you're lying, and you just don't want to have that kind of reputation.
And most people lie all the time. They have a false front about themselves, and it's just like, if it's not a
Yeah,
lie, all they do is repeat platitudes and sort of have expected behaviors that they follow like a routine, and that don't ever say anything or expect anyone to say anything. They seem shocked if you say something frank, and it's quite fun.
and the other thing is, and I think this goes for a lot of artistic people, because artistic people tend to be, very passionate nature. When there's something painful in their past, maybe especially childhood. I was bullied a lot when I was a child because, everybody had darker skin and darker hair. So it's like, whoa, why is your hair that color? Actually, it's kind of brown black, but it's not jet black. When I went to school, everybody had jet black hair.
Right.
And then everybody assumed that I was a colonialist. Oh, you colonized my country, and it's why my country's poor, because I mean, not everybody, but I did have those kinds of people when I was going to school. And when you have that happen to you, instead of being resentful about it, you have to take it. You have to analyze the situation. Well, really, it was just a few people. And most of the other kids were kind of okay or kind of benign.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, like a lot of the other people never recover from that, and they hold a grudge against, the entire world over it.
Yeah. I mean, and so when I was growing up, not everybody, I was kind of like, oh yeah, that ugly colonist girl. So, I just grew up thinking, well, okay, I'm not very attractive, because you form that when you're a kid. So I'm just going to have to work on something else.
And you went on to be a model. And
no, this is when I was a kid, and I was kind of, actually, to be honest, I was actually a pretty goofy looking kid. But anyway, so it's actually good to have that against you, because then you develop other parts of your personality. I mean, if everybody fawned over me, I might not have a personality.
Right.
So instead of looking at it in a resentful way and, just embrace it. Like I said, when I told people this, because an artist are very resentful.
The core truth.
And I'll, and I tell them, when you look at a human, even somebody who might be very sick and has, genetic problems and deformity, you can't find anything.
Yeah.
You can't find anything that a human has made. You can think of the Manhattan Project or something, but that can equal that person, even with all the deformities. So you have to have this sort of humility. And when you have that, people are really drawn to you. And there's nothing fake about it. It's a very sincere thing. I think the important part, if you want to make money as an artist, is the connection with people. That includes a sense of humor.
Right.
And I think if you study human history, ancient history, even, fairly current history, and you have all of those things, and you have an understanding of human nature, it makes you very, very effective in getting what you want done. You can do all these artistic things. You just need to have that art of diplomacy.
Right.
It cannot be understated.
You also had those connections, though. You made connections that were useful. You have to have those kind of, but I guess through diplomacy, you make connections anyway. So
Yeah. I mean, I didn't major in art, you
yeah,
know,
right.
and,
So
and you still have to submit bids. You don't just get a project just like that. You sort of have to compete with other people, and some of them are, firms,
yeah,
advertising firms that are, a lot bigger than yours. I started with nothing, no background. It's just really chutzpah. It's a Jewish word. Or Jewish. Chutzpah.
Yes, I know that one. Yeah. So you what was I going to say? So when you submit a bid, you have to basically you submit your proposed design for whatever.
Yeah, propose design and then the application. It has to inspire because, it's commercial. It's not the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
there are ads that can make you cry. I've seen ads that made me cry. It's
Like what?
actually a Chevron ad.
Oh, Jesus.
Pretorius, the runner with the missing leg. He was in a Chevron ad, and
Okay.
it was narrated by that actor. It was an American actor,
See, I have
and
to be okay. Okay, go on. Yeah, go on.
was the human spirit and all that. That ad actually made me cry.
I
And
know,
I
but
know it's a Chevron ad, but
yeah, that's the kind of
together
duplicitous.
so well.
That's
And
that's the kind of ad. That's the kind of ad that really annoys me and gets me the worst because it's not nothing. I like it when if advertising is necessary, it should be a straightforward thing. This is what we're doing. This is it. Not some like human emotional thing where we're about various values because then they get into this woke signaling stuff as well. It's all through like tapping into an emotional thing they can grab and like in order to sell you something like that's not good.
I know, and I know the tricks of the trade, but
Yeah.
you
But as far as advertising goes, you would say it's effective. You have to say it's effective.
Scientists are emotional.
Yeah. So they've got the science of that. Like as far as purely in the world of advertising and the science of it, you have to admit it was effective. That would your?
It was effective. It was effective.
And you were crying about what's his name with the leg.
He's a theater actor, I think, a Scott something. I forgot, but they just chose the guy with a perfect voice. They could have chosen, a British narrator, but then it would have been too highfalutin. It was just right for that kind of ad. It was down to earth enough.
Right.
So.
Well, that's the world of advertising, I guess. Yeah, and so have you done like video ads as well? Is it?
We do editing. So, that's another thing. When you do editing, I can tell you a lot. Sometimes when they award, like best director or something, sometimes you have to wonder if the award should actually go to the editor, because I've seen director edits, which you're like, what is this? And then you see the one that the editor edits, and it's so much better. Maybe because because sometimes when someone's directing something, and it's happened because I've done a little directing, not movies, but like promotional things, right. And you wanted to put the scene, and maybe you did several takes of it.
Yeah.
So you're quite attached to that scene because you did many takes. Oh, because the sun wasn't out, the clouds covered up the sun, so the lighting wasn't right. So you want to keep that scene in because you work so many times, and then in the end it just doesn't work. And the editor, because he's removed from that emotional attachment to how many times you filmed that scene, as well, it doesn't. The flow is not there; it affects the flow.
Yes.
So, a lot of things belong to the editor, I'd have to say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Even with music, because sometimes the director might think, oh, I'm visualizing it this way, and it should have suspects that are sustra or something in it.
Yeah.
And at the end of everything, well, the beat of things, it doesn't go with that music. So, the editor might pick some sort of 80s sort of synth music, and sometimes it works better. Not all the time, but sometimes it does work better.
I always say the best and purest art is the work of a single mind, uninhibited by other outside opinion. But there are definitely occasions when combining or just getting outside opinion on this and that, which I do myself. Like I'm trying to write a second book right now, and I'm getting other people's opinions to like just give me some input, because I know I will reject some of their opinions, and I will accept some as like, oh yes, that's good. And I will retain ultimate control, so that will keep it whole from my point of view. But I know, say, like you can have weaknesses that can be improved by the right person to help you. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. But when they go too far and things get decided by committee, and you have like a boardroom of people making decisions on something, then everything gets watered down to just shite, as far as I can see.
And then you don't want to take credit for the work anymore after that.
Yeah.
That wasn't it. Seriously, because he was like, oh, weren't you working on this thing? I was like, no, I wasn't. You don't want to take credit for it after that. And for me, I think it happened a fair amount with book covers, because sometimes the professor would come in and say, well, there was this picture that I liked when I was in Cambridge or something. And, sometimes it's a really bad picture. And they said, like, yeah, but they had the sentimental attachment to Cambridge. But I know what's going to sell if it's on a bookshelf. And the whole point is you want more people to read your book.
You do know what's on it. You would say you know what's going to sell on a bookshelf, would you? In general.
I think in general, yeah.
What would you say? That is,
well, it depends what genre you're trying to sell. I actually would like to work on sci-fi book covers. I haven't yet.
Right.
But I've seen like math books that. I mean, I'm not a mathematician, but I've seen math book covers that are inspirational. Like. Yeah, I think if I see that, everything I see is going to be on some geometric plane.
Well, there's inspirational, and then there's what appeals to the masses, right?
But if you're a mathematician, well, I'm not, but I've actually seen math books that look really great.
Yeah.
So it's important. It's connecting to the human psyche.
Right. Which evolves over time. Like I'm more out of touch with what would be. I can't tell nowadays what would be popular, what would sell well. I don't think, compared to when I was younger, maybe I would know. Or it's not even that I am unable to see it, other than that I mostly disagree with it or something. And
I think Jodorowsky's Dune would still sort of sell to some niche crowd.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah. I mean, I think
so. I don't know how many there are, but
I was talking, Giger, and I wanted this spaceship with a tongue coming out.
Yeah.
You saw his interview, right?
Yeah. There's like a movie about the almost making of Dune. I remember seeing it.
Yeah.
And they were going to get the music done by this prog rock band that I really like, that nobody else likes. What are they called again? Magma. This French prog rock band.
Yeah. And then. And my son was gonna play, Luke Atreides. What else did he say? Oh, he was gonna get Gaudi, right?
Oh yeah. Was he?
And then what else? Yeah. Oh, and I wanted Orson Welles to be, And then what I did was, to convince him to. Do the movie. I told him that I would get him his favorite chef, and the chef would cook for him every day.
Oh, excellent.
Speaking of Orson Welles, I'm pretty sure this was Orson Welles, where, because there's a lot of discussion about IQ.
Right.
And speaking of Orson Welles, I remembered reading, he said that, well, if the Aboriginals drafted an IQ test, all of the Western world would fail, which is actually really true. Because I do pretty well in IQ tests, and people say, well, you can't study for an IQ test. Actually, you can. Because after doing it a while, you notice there's a pattern to different types of questions.
Yes.
There's always a way of doing things.
Right. Yeah. And it's too bad Jodorowsky's Dune it couldn't be made compared to the, like, I'm sure silly and awful CGI versions that are. There's been one that was like maybe sort of okay, and then I think there's another one coming out soon. I won't even go see it. It's going to be just terrible.
Oh yeah, they had this other one. Yeah, I mean, Jodorowsky's Dune was like, what did he say? He said he wanted something that looked like an acid trip without taking the acid.
Well, that's what all his movies are like that. all his films are like that. I used to like them actually, even though they have a certain modernist ethos that I maybe like, but he's not like, he has like David Lynch, that certain classical scale that he applies to it, and it's not like random. It's not like watching an Andy Warhol movie of like an open door for 2 hours or whatever. It's like see,
Jodorowsky has that. He has that connection where, the film wasn't made, but when you're just hearing him talk about it, then I wanted this, I wanted the spaceship with the tongue coming out and then the Atreides coming out. You want to watch it. It's like, I want to see it because he convinces you that it's this wonderful subliminal thing that you just have to see.
I don't know that he would have. I don't know that he has your people power though. I've seen him say things like, "When I see these American movies, I want to shit on them," and like this kind of. He's not like forgiving. Sometimes he's like, "I'm the artist. Fuck off." And he actually did some really good. What do you call them? Graphic novels where he wrote them in Mobius. Like the ink on that. Those are really good.
Yeah,
I like those. But we've drifted off the topic. But I mean, you've explained as well as you could how you might get into commercial art. Let's say, and it's very, very complicated, and it's not easy, and you need a wide variety of skills from this person of the world who's like absorbed everything from everywhere.
Person of the world who grew up in a really poor country.
Yeah. But, I mean, so, you'd have some idea if you wanted to be a commercial artist. I mean, I still think we're, anything, the world is going to like collapse into a flaming cyclone. But in the meantime, if you need to work.
Don't be so pessimistic. You don't want
I feel great about that. I feel good about that. That's what gets me going.
Yeah, sometimes
like you said before, I think you're like a traditional. I believe you're a traditionalist person. You said to me earlier. I was like, yeah, but like, I am. But I've gone so far into that it's like I'm not even by like a normal standard anymore. Like I have like a Roman morality or something. Like I'm well beyond like worrying about women, being modest, even though they should to a certain degree. But it's hard to explain my thoughts on things. Let's say because I've gone so.
I understand. Yeah, ancient Rome.
Well, just I have an archaic view, and I think it's the healthy view. And I do think things have to burn down a bit to get, because like things are just getting. I mean, I don't know where you are. Maybe you can't see like in the West today. Although we shouldn't talk about it too much because I don't want to get political. But obviously, it's kind of dissipating. Let's say there's no chance of a Jodorowsky's Dune right now or anything of any artistic.
No. I think they like these formulaic things where they think they're going to make a buck.
Yeah.
And
Netflix originals.
Ricky Gervais says, this show should just be about who had the best Netflix film or something. And they're like, well done, Netflix. You you want everything.
Yeah, I didn't even see that. That's good. Yeah, yeah.
You know, he did. And then he said, everybody's doing remakes. And I heard that they were going to reduce Sophie's Choice. And then it's just going to be, it's going to be this one then, And then he was saying, there's no more art in anything. It's the award's just going to go to, we're going to give the award to the most, ripped junkie or something.
Yeah.
Nobody acts anymore. It's all these superhero movies.
Yeah. See, to be a true art is not corporate. You're doing art within the corporate world as much as you can, and I believe you are a true artist because I've seen your work and so forth. But you like a truer art to be true to yourself in every sense, and to do it is risky. You may make something that's terrible, but you're like your heart is on your sleeve kind of thing. You know what I mean? And you like those great. I mean, all of them from Wagner to some like B movie director who made a cult classic. You're sort of like you just sort of risk it all, do it your own way. And sometimes it works, and then it's not always going to work either. So, but that's anti-corporate. Corporate wants at least a reasonable, measured amount of success every time. So to do that, you're destroying.
And sometimes they fail miserably. They
fail miserably. Yeah, more often than not, they fail miserably too.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
No, go on.
Well, it's like Excalibur. I really like that movie. By John Berman.
Yeah, they filmed it not far from
here. And they, they have Wagner. That scene where knights, squires, and they start riding out in the drawbridge.
Yeah.
And then they have this. I mean,
well, that's Orff. They say that that's Orff at when they're riding off the drawbridge. But like Wagner is in there at different parts. So
and. It's so hard to beat that scene, and it's just so hard to beat. And they had this, blackened out grapevine or something that was, it's very low tech. Yeah. But you don't, some people's like, oh, that's funny. Why didn't they use a CAD or, I don't know, 3D Studio Max to make it? Well, they didn't have it at that time. But it's just so hard to beat that. Sometimes when you have limitations, then things are actually better because you have more creative.
Yes, that's why I complain about. That's my complaint about modernism. It claims to open the doors of the vistas of creativity, but by throwing out all the rules of everything, you just get this wash of chaos and nothing. And like the rules and the limitations are the most important part. As weird as that is, as strange as it sounds. And like, imagine going into your boardroom with your presentation, trying to sell something, and it's fucking something like that, Excalibur with Wagner, Yeah,
and it's like, well, what's that? Wait, Wagner? Are the kids gonna like that? Can we pick a Miley Cyrus song?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why things are terrible. This deciding by committee and this corporate view has taken over everything. So I don't know how, say, in this. That's why you have these movies from the 70s and 80s like Excalibur. They still had whatever attitude they had. It was like they were willing to take risks.
The
director was the artist, and he said, "Just do what you want." Sorry, go on.
The movie that really of late has disappointed me is The Thing. John Carpenter.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Because I mean, even if you're not, a physicist. I'm a bit of a science nerd, but when they do these CGI special effects, you're like, blood doesn't spatter that way.
Okay, so you're complaining about the newer remake, not John Carpenter's version, right?
Yeah, not John Carpenter. There's nothing to complain about with John Carpenter.
No, there's not. No, there's not. A perfect horror movie. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I was just reminded of it because I was in Twitter and one of these guys that I followed posted, "This is my social life now," and it was that scene where they were getting tested, where he put on the Petri dish, he fired it up to see if there would be a reaction, and they were all tied up. That scene It's like, this
Yeah.
is my social life now because of the lockdown thing. And
that
it
was
just, oh my gosh, yeah. And then everybody started talking, yeah, the remake sucked. What?
I didn't even bother to watch it. I don't even bother to watch new movies. I just assume it's going to suck. Unless I hear from several people that it doesn't suck, I won't even try to watch it. Really, I won't. I give up.
You should, because then they might get the picture. They're like, yeah, we need to start making things a bit better.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was such a good movie.
It was.
Why?
When he was at his height was amazing.
Yeah.
One of the last
There's
greats.
that part where the head comes off, and then the spider legs come out, and then everybody. What
Was
is
it
that?
Rick Baker? Was the guy? Was that the guy who did it? Rick Baker. He was a special effects guy. I think he was, anyways. But yes, definitely that is true. And so this is why I complained that the corporate world and the mercantile class being at the top of the rung of the ladder just means that things get watered down by committee into this artless nothingness. And that's all part of the problem, where you have to have our priorities are all wrong. We had other priorities before where you would at least take a risk on something. You can tell when something's risky, and our piece is risky because there'll be some people will love it and some people will hate it. Basically, is an indication that a real creativity has gone on, and it's one of the factors. It won't be just this bland kind of like general acceptance.
Well, you remember, I think the first time that I tweeted you something, I think it was the first time, was those drainage pipes.
Oh, yeah.
And then I said, well, I'm working on this sort of irrigation system, and that gives me ideas. I'm still working on it. And the thing is, I said, I don't think I want to have a lot of PVC pipes everywhere. So I was researching how the Romans did drainage, where they just use gravity and channeling.
Yeah.
Just very, very little pipe.
Yeah.
And, and I felt really good about myself when I finished this. Like, it's like a revelation.
Is it over? Are you still working on it?
I don't know. I'm still it's not a huge project, but I just really feel good that this was here all this time. Sometimes something works and you don't need to improve on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the idea of improving it or changing it is something other than what you think. People think progress is a certain thing, and it's not necessarily, because it's so easy to hijack the idea of progress or something new just by providing something new. It doesn't mean that's the best way forward. Yeah. But yes, that's great. I'm glad to hear it. You'll have to send me pictures of whatever it is and whatever you did.
Oh, well, no? It's hard to show the angle, but some parts you just have like a 3-degree dip, and it channels, and I disguised it with planners and everything, and it is like it works, and it's like it's like 3,000. It was like a 2,500, 3,000-year-old technique. I don't see why you need to use PVC pipes everywhere.
If they can use plastic for something nowadays, that's the rule. They will, and then they think it's new and great, and it'll last forever. And plastic may last a long time, but it has its own problems.
Yeah,
that's the rule now. It's new if you use plastic as a material, and it's good. We are in the plastic age. We had the Bronze Age. Sounds pathetic and awful, but we are in the plastic age.
Yeah, we've been in the plastic age since like the late 40s, early 50s. I mean, it's presented a lot of good things, but sometimes it's overused.
Well, everything has its pros and cons, but it's overused, and it's I think it's like poisonous. I think, and like
that's true.
Yeah,
that is true.
Okay, so we've digressed into lots of things, that all of it very interesting, but we should. It's been pretty long.
Okay.
It was very good. So how should we conclude it? Anything you want to say?
I think if you want to get what you want done as an artist, the art of diplomacy is very important. Okay. And it's an art form in itself.
Yes. Right. And not even just in commercial art, probably in being a fine artist.
Anywhere.
Yeah, true. That's true. Yes. A good and wholesome message. So great.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, thanks for that. And we'll talk to you again soon. And I'll whatever, that's it.
Okay.
So I'll end this. This will still be on for a minute.
Well,
I'll just
good night. It's good night on my end. I think
Okay.
it's what is it? It's afternoon in your end, right?
Yeah,
Afternoon.
4-ish. So yeah.
Bye.
Okay. Bye. Thanks.
Care.